Welcome to Eye on APEC, a television program for international, regional, and domestic events, and a casual business talk. In today's show, we will discuss about energy cooperation among members of Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, a major regional grouping of ASEAN and Pacific countries and territories. Today's program will focus particularly on energy efficiency and conservation among APEC members. Now let me show you energy issue in the BIS overview.
BIS overview.
APEC or Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation currently has 21 members. In addition to cooperation in trade liberalization, the grouping also works together in many other areas, including energy. Recently, APEC Energy Working Group met in Bangkok. The Energy Working Group seeks to further APEC goal of facilitating energy trade and investment within the grouping economies and ensuring that energy contributes to the enhancement of the APEC community. The Energy Working Group has 5 expert groups. One of them is the expert group on energy efficiency and conservation. This expert group works to promote energy conservation among APEC members and promote the application of energy efficiency practices and technologies. It also works to develop and enhance trade between APEC members in products and services and energy efficiency practices and technologies. Saving energy and making use of it more efficiently is certainly a priority of APEC members. In the BIS chat, I will talk to Mr. Terry Collins, Chair of Expert Group on Energy Efficiency and Conservation of APEC. Now, let's join me in the BIS chat.
BIS chat.
Mr. Collins, thanks for joining Eye on APEC. Since you are the chair of the expert group of energy efficiency and conservation of APEC or Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, could you start by telling us how long this energy working group has been around? Has it always been part of APEC since the beginning? Give us some history.
Yes, some history. The Energy Working Group is going next week. Will we have its 45th meeting, and we meet twice a year. So around about 23 years now that we've been formulated. The group itself is made up of about 5 expert groups dealing with different subjects. The group that I'm responsible for is energy efficiency and conservation, although there are other groups on energy data, new and renewable technology, fossil fuels, and the Asia Pacific Energy Research Centre. We're the kind of the groups that get things done. We run a number of projects, and we put together a number of assistance and other programs for members, but we're really the implementers, and we try to implement the aspirations of our ministers' declarations. So for mine, the primary target that I'm focused on is our minister's aspirational goal of reducing energy intensity by 45% by the year 2035. 40% reduction in energy intensity. That means although the economies will be growing, for the unit of output, we'll use 40% less energy to achieve that than we would have in the year 2005.
Is that your the main objective and mission of your expert group?
My expert group tries to advance technology and services around the energy efficiency, and we're trying to negate the impacts of energy production as you're aware, a lot of energy is produced by fossil fuels, and so anything we can do to reduce that demand has a positive impact on, or mitigates that impacts on climate. But also it's for the prosperity of the members as well, because productivity, getting some more utility or usage for that unit of measurement, all makes sound business sense.
So your working group, expert group on energy efficiency and conservation, apart from that, what are the other major objective of mission of your expert group?
Our expert group is one of trying to, we set a number of standards, and many of the member economies, and Thailand is a good example, have standards and labelling programs. And your viewers would be familiar with the signs that they see on refrigerators and air conditioning units. However, amongst the economies, there is many different standards and there's different rules within the area. So one of the jobs that we try to do is to harmonise those standards, and we've had a number of workshops into that regard, and today was one on air conditioning units and harmonising the standards for the ASEAN area. But of course, ASEAN has members that are common to APEC as well, and if they could achieve harmonisation, our next goal would be how we could harmonise the ASEAN standard with the APEC standard. The benefits of that are obviously for the manufacturers, that they don't have to test or provide different specified models for different markets, so it's cheaper, that we can share test results, because many economies don't have laboratories or the ability to test equipment. So having a common standard allows other economies' testing regimes to be used, so thereby reducing those compliance costs as well.
So apart from creating this standard and project labeling, tell us more about it, your activities and projects of your expert group.
Oh, quite broad ranging. We do everything from doing peer reviews of energy efficiency policies. So we'll go to an economy that we're invited to, we'll review all their energy efficiency policies, we'll make recommendations to their ministers or their politicians as to what improvements could be made. And then following that, we'd often provide some training or assistance. We may put together projects where we look at building the capacity around some particular sectors that they're working in. An example of that was recently there was a window testing workshop we had here, and it was around trying to encourage the uptake of more efficient windows in buildings. Buildings are a significant user of energy, and particularly heating and cooling. So the ability to actually test the windows and model them and work out which ones are the best was one of those areas that people needed some training on. So APEC put together a workshop that had experts from the window industry, and they came out with these computer modelling systems, of which the people who are either purchasing windows for buildings or building them and providing them could actually model the energy performance and the thermal resistance of the windows. So that's one example. We also do work around transportation, around standards for motor vehicles, and around labelling systems for them. We've done work on air conditioning, we've done work on refrigeration. In fact, we've done work on most of the products themselves, around trying to harmonise standards. But we've also done work around people how to introduce policies that will be effective, and actually how to measure the impact of those policies.
What are the current key issues concerning energy in the APEC?
Well, I think it's topical to talk about what's the impact on climate. We'd all be familiar with what's recently happened in the Philippines, superstorms and other climatic conditions that are happening. These seem to be following the predicted patterns that many scientists will say around it. And you've also got to see issues like smog and poor air quality as a consequence of using coal to produce electricity. So by energy efficiency is about reducing those demands. And that's some of the big issues facing our members, is the sheer demand for energy. We're constrained by the amount of fossil fuels that we have, and even though there are new production techniques, or better techniques, would be the way of describing it, fracking and other things to release reserves of gas and oil, it's still only a finite reserve. So sooner or later, those energy sources will be used. So the Energy Working Group looks at new renewable energy like solar and hydro and geothermal. And the group, often some economies will have experience with those technology, and they'll help or assist out those other economies that wish to work in that area. So it's just not one simple thing. It's not about trying to be more efficient with it or to conserve it. It's about what other forms of energy can be generated that are going to meet the growing demand. And it is one of the great challenges, is how to meet our growing demand for energy. An example of that, I saw a recent statistic where over the next 20 years, 100 million people will leave the rural areas of China and move to the cities. Those 100 million people will want to buy a refrigerator and live in an apartment and have air conditioning and buy appliances. So you can imagine the huge growth that will be required to meet those energy needs. So structurally, this whole area is very fluid. We've got not only urbanisation happening, people leaving the rural areas, but we've got a growing middle class. People are more prosperous, and as people are more prosperous, they want to buy goods. And many of those goods, all of those goods require energy to make, and many of them require energy to function.
I just wonder whether is there any society or country where energy efficiency has proven to be able to reduce energy consumption?
I think what it does, it's best defined by it slows down the growth. In my own economy, New Zealand, our standards and labelling program, we believe has, in the last 10 years, has suppressed growth by between 5 and 7% in the residential sector. And in fact, the energy companies themselves, two in particular, recently announced that their profits had been impacted by consumers buying efficient products and efficient lighting, and that had reduced the demand for electricity.
And I wonder, so for your expert group, what are the specific area of energy consumption that you might be targeting on? For example, fossil fuel or electricity or whatever?
It's a mixture of both. Obviously, electricity is very important. It's one of those very clean, once it's converted to electricity, it's a very clean and efficient fuel. It leaves those residue once it's been used. That's great, but to produce it causes a number of issues depending on the feedstock, whether it's coal or gas or renewables. There's a different mix to it. To us, it's about trying, a good example would be a workshop we had yesterday on transformers. There's going to be a massive investment in the electricity distribution and generation in the APEC area. Just by putting in place good transformers, efficient transformers, you could save $19 billion by 2030. And that's $19 billion worth of electricity that's going to do absolutely nothing except be lost. So just by putting in standards and making them produce them out of better material in a more efficient way, they can make those savings. So it's that level that we're operating at. Now we can do standards, today was around air conditioning units. As I said earlier, this growing, more prosperous economy, buying these equipment. So what we have to do is just ensure that we just cap the growing energy demand. I don't think that we will be, that there will be a negative energy. What will happen is that there will be just a cap on growth. And with that energy, we'll get more utility out of it. So we'll be more productive and we'll do more things with the energy we've got, and they'll be the experiences that we have.
So Mr. Collins has talked about the background of his energy group on energy efficiency and conservation. In the next break, he will discuss more specifically about the issue his group has discussed during the past week of meetings. So please stay tuned with us.
Biz Chat.
Okay, Mr. Collins, so your expert group has been meeting in Bangkok since Monday. So tell us a bit more what have been done in the past week.
In the past week we've met, we generally meet twice a year, and the more formal arrangements, and we'll have anywhere between 10 and 15 member economies that will come, and we report to them on the outcomes of our projects, of which we have usually 6 to 8 running at any one time through the year. During the day and a half meeting of that, we also had those present report back on their transport policies and some of the issues that are affecting them. And that's around knowledge sharing and creating networks that we can work out and offer some assistance to it. We had a half-day meeting with our other expert group on energy data, and they talked to us about their needs to get better data to measure the impacts of the work that we're doing and to see whether we're on target to meet our aspirational energy goal. Because we have many people here, it's also a very good time to have workshops. So on Wednesday we had a full day workshop on distribution transformers, and there'd been a recent study around in China itself and other economies, and a survey where we looked at the type of distribution transformers that had been used, the impact that they were having, and possible ways that by introducing some standards for them, the energy we could save, and that was approximately $19 billion by the year 2030. And then this morning we did another one on air conditioners, and we were looking again, we had manufacturers here, and they were talking about recently agreeing ASEAN economies to harmonise one standard. So that required that some of the members of ASEAN, and I know Thailand in particular, made some concessions around what test voltage they would use, but collectively they agreed to have a common standard. So we're reporting back on that. Our interest in APEC is that there is an international ISO standard starting, and we wish to harmonise, that is, have one standard for air conditioners over the whole area. And as I may have mentioned earlier, there were a number of products that are traded in this area that had multiple standards. So trying to harmonise those is a very important part of our work. And finally, of course, we've got some site visits. We're going to see go to Thai Airways, recently a winner of the Thai Energy Awards and ASEAN Energy Awards, and that was for the retrofitting of their building. Because not all most of the buildings that we're going to have in 20 years' time have already been built. So if we need to get them energy efficient, we actually need to understand what we can do about making them operate in a less energy intensive way. How to improve their air conditioning units, how to aspect them so that they don't get solar gain, that is the heat from the sun, how to use water saving devices and better insulation, better windows. There's a whole lot of ways that we can make the buildings actually operate more effectively and be more comfortable for the inhabitants. And then finally we're at the lovely convention centre, and they've got some efficient lighting technology, and lighting offers huge potential for energy savings, not least being LEDs. LEDs came from the solid state industry, from the electronics. But it was only about 5 years ago when the lighting companies purchased them or partnered with them that we got a significant step change in the performance. So we had photometrics, the science of lighting, meet this new technology, and combined they've significantly improved the output of LEDs. In fact, this year, about 2 years ahead of time, the supply price curve intersected, and that is on the demand side that the demand for LEDs accelerated, driving the price down to make them more efficient. Now as the demand for these increases, the per unit price will obviously decrease as well. The technology itself has had some initial teething problems. The lighting output was not as good as many people claimed. It didn't last as long as many people claimed, and it wasn't meeting the expectations of consumers. Those problems have been generally solved now. Good LEDs operate very well and produce good light outputs. And today we're seeing them in really unusual, well not unusual, but in unique applications that we mightn't have been able to do with traditional lighting. For remote communities, now we can put photovoltaics, PV chargers on top of a power pole and give some amenity lighting, some street lighting. So there's safety and there's some utilities for it. We don't need to have significant cabling in of electricity lines for these remote communities because we can provide light because it has a really low energy requirement to do so. But obviously replacing incandescent lights. Only 5% of the energy used in an incandescent light provides light. The other 95% goes to heat.
Yeah, okay.
So when it's in a building, not only is it wasteful, but you've then got to have your air conditioning unit trying to take the heat out, so you're using even more energy. With LEDs, they don't provide heat, they just provide light, and they use probably 7 to 10% of the energy that would be required for an incandescent light. So they make sense.
So, okay, you have mentioned transformer, you have mentioned air conditioner and lighting. So what are the other issues that you might that you have touched on during these weeks of meeting?
We've touched on energy saving windows. We've touched on building design. We've touched on electric vehicles. Again, because that's electric vehicles are one of those technologies again that offer great potential because for many countries that have renewable energy, electricity, it displaces carbon-intensive petroleum. So promoting those type of vehicles in different economies has a double win, so to speak. We're also talking about a number of other product-based things: refrigeration, washing machines, rice cookers. There are lots of standards, all those things that we plug in, because it's really interesting. Look, I'm of a particular age where I can remember back in the 70s. And back in the 70s, if we thought about what we had in our houses, we perhaps had one television, and we had a toaster, an oven, and one refrigerator, and that was about it. Our parents washed the dishes. Now you go into a modern house in a developed economy, and there'll be not one television, maybe 3 or 4 televisions. There'll be a computer, there'll be iPhones, there'll be bread knives, toasters, extractor fans, one refrigerator, maybe a freezer, a dishwasher, a washing machine, a clothes dryer, all these equipment. So what we tended to do is we've created all these labour-saving devices, and then we've created all this home entertainment. So we then go and sit with the energy that we're using, the time that we've freed up, we then go and sit in front of these energy-using appliances to be entertained. And my dad, he would listen to the radio that used 8 watts. Nowadays, our kids, they come in and turn the 60-inch TV on or the 32-inch TV, and often they're not even listening, watching. They're just walking around with these things on. So it's the adoption of all these energy-using technologies, and as they come along, we have to create standards for them. Televisions was something that was recently done. When they moved out of cathode ray television into plasmas and LEDs, that massive uptake of that technology just put huge energy demands on. So we create standards, labelling programs for them, and we encourage the manufacture of more efficient products.
As a user, I have always been curious about this project labeling. They said air conditioner, this is the level number 5, save energy the most. How reliable they are? How can we as a user really know that they really save energy?
And that's a very,
look at the bill.
Well, that's a very good question, because that was one of the topics that were also discussed during our meeting. Many of those products are tested in laboratories, and the manufacturers have to disclose their energy use, of which we convey in the label. 1 star uses a lot more than 5 stars, and we often say that the more stars, the better, and it's a very simple message. But behind that, there is a range of testing facilities and laboratories. Government agencies like myself buy products, send them off to be tested to ensure that they accurately perform as they're supposed to perform. And if they don't, we often take action against those manufacturers of those goods that provide them. So consumers can buy those in confidence that they perform as they claim, because there is testing going on in the background to ensure that they do meet those claims. And that's why it's important to harmonise standards, because not everybody can afford to have the facilities to test a washing machine and a clothes dryer and a television and a heat pump and all those devices. So the ability to be able to send a good to another laboratory in another economy and have it tested and understand that those test results are valid for your country is one of those areas that we focus on here as well.
Yeah. Okay, now you have touched upon the barrier issue. So what are the future that your expert group look forward to?
Well, that's a very good question, because if you'd asked me 10 years ago what standards or what work we've been doing, I think my answer would have been completely different, because what I'll be working on in 10 years may not have been invented yet. And it's that rise of the home electronics and the computer-driven technology where I think our challenges will be. In that short period, I think it's around smart appliances and smart grids. So that's the ability to, most electricity systems have peak loads, peaks and troughs. At certain times of the day, they want more electricity use than other times of the day. Well, managing those loads with smart appliances. And nowadays we've got smart appliances, so you could be driving home and you could pull your iPhone out and you could turn your air conditioning unit on, and you could turn your microwave on, or you could do other things. Those relationships of the home energy management systems will be key to many of the places. And that's about saying energy is cheap right now because nobody's using it. The machine will turn itself on and wash my clothes at 3 o'clock in the morning. Or energy has been in high demand right now, my refrigerator won't go into defrost. So it'll pick up a signal from the electricity supplier that there's a high demand, and it'll stop putting the fridge into the defrost cycle. So it's those kind of smart uses, I think, will be the focus for the next 10 years for us.
Thanks very much, Mr. Colin, for joining Iron Lewis today, and hope you enjoy your stay in Bangkok and have a safe trip back home. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
I hope you enjoy our show today. I hope to see you again next week. Bye for now.